Well, thanks for that, Carl. Now I can move on to the interesting stuff, the financials. Just, just a warning, I've sent my three girls outside. I said I needed a bit of peace and quiet, so I've sent them outside to dig some holes with Dad, so that could be at risk at any moment, but I'll carry on while it's quiet. So the focus of my work's just to try to quantify what the impact of the proposed reform would have on the day of transition, so 1st of July 24, and then to look at what would our finances look like after reform. Is council still viable after they take the three waters out? Is the reform going to deliver the balance sheet separation and the increased borrowing capacity that they've talked about? So to do my review work, I've started with our LTP, our 10-year plan we've just adopted, and then I've applied some assumptions to that as we go along. So I'll discuss those assumptions as we come to them. So first of all, what happens to our bottom line from the first year, 24-25, under reform? So our three water income would reduce by 17.9 million. So that's our targeted rates for three waters, all our metered water, fees and charges from trade waste, that sort of thing, development contributions, government subsidies. So that makes up about 26% of our total income. Taking the three water, the direct expenses related to three water, that's about 15.9 million. And then our overhead costs, this is where I've had to apply some assumptions and think about, of our activities now, things like asset management. We'd probably lose a few staff in that area that would transfer over to a new entity. Things like in the IT area, there's all sorts of licenses and stuff that go with all our staff. So those things would transfer or onto another entity. And then other areas, customer services, finance, HR. So I've applied some assumptions in that area and came up with potential savings or transfer of overhead costs of 555,000. You won't hold me to any of these, I know. Now, so once you add the direct costs and the overheads together, that makes up about a reduction of our expenses, about 25%. So we've got 26% income, 25% expenses. Now, because we've got all our overhead support costs that we can't apply to the three waters from that point, these are what we call our stranded overheads. So we'd need to collect that, the costs still need to be funded, but we'd collect that from a different source. So for argument's sake, in my modelling, I've calculated we'd add that to general rates, which results in an increase of 1.8% going forward. So there's a potential that some of these additional costs would be wrapped up in some of the government support packages that they've talked about, but for how long we don't know. So eventually they'd end up in I've assumed in rates. So after we've made these adjustments to our bottom line for that first year 24-25 and run that model across the remaining years of our LTP, our projections show that council remains viable. We break even over that point, and that's really what you'd expect, because we don't our three waters activities aren't propping up the rest of council's activity. So that's the bottom line. That yes, we could remain viable if you took the three waters out of the equation. So now what happens to our balance sheet from the day of transfer? So if we assume that we're going to do all the capital work that we've said in our LTP from now up until the date of transfer, and we borrow all the money we say we're going to borrow, then working that through, we'd be transferring assets with a book value of 213 million. So that's a quarter of our assets. And we'd be transferring external debt of 25 million, so 35% of our total debt.
So, Larnie, what happened to our 305 million that we had a month ago?
So the 305 million, Neil, is the replacement cost of our assets. they were talking about replacement cost, whereas in our books we have we record our assets at depreciated replacement cost.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
So that's what they'll be taking it over at the book value. Is that the?
That's what would come off our balance sheet at the time. Yeah. So just an important thing to remember, with your personal situation, your personal mortgage, the value of your assets and your equity is really important for how much you can borrow, but it's different for councils. Our ability to borrow is based on our revenue flows. So if we're reducing our debt by 35%, and I said before we're reducing our income by 26%, that means we've got more headroom there. So our ability to borrow will increase under this reform. So that's what this graph here is showing. The red line is our current limit on debt to revenue at 150%. And the green line is following what we had in the LTP. So in the LTP, we said our net debt to revenue was 106% at the 24-25 point, and it would reduce to 78%. That's the blue line. So our average net debt over the remaining 7 years from the point we transitioned would reduce from 114% down to 81%. So yes, we definitely have more headroom. This graph here now is showing, so just looking at it in a slightly different way, if we were borrowing right up to our 150% limit, it's showing how much room we'd have to borrow. So the green bars compare the available borrowing capacity we have in our LTP projections. So the buffer we have between our planned borrowing and the limit of 150%. And then if you strip out the Three Waters revenue and what we plan to borrow for our Three Water projects in the LTP, then the blue bars will show the increase in our borrowing capacity. So looking at across the time there, we'd be able to borrow about another 13 million above what we'd projected in our LTP without hitting our limit. So hopefully that makes sense.
Just to clarify that, Larnia, that 150% is our own debt imposed limit. There's a lot of that, isn't it? We set that ourselves.
Yeah, we have. We according to meet the LGFA would allow us up to 175% for a council of our size, but councils chose to stick with 150%.
Larnia, sixth form bookkeeping here. The 22 mil that we would be gifted, how does that make a financial impact for our little council going forward? Okay. Have you looked at anything in there, or because
what I've done,
carry on.
What I've done so is I've not included any of that in our projections. I've just stuck with what we had in the LTP. So all those things would be a bonus on top. Mm-hmm. So they would increase our ability to borrow even further.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so another way of looking at it, Sue, and it's a good question, is that if we get 17 million, my strong recommendation would be to use that for internal borrowing and to reduce it and thus allow ourselves a more favourable interest rate as we do now with internal reserves.
Cool. So this, I said I'd come back to internal debt, and this stuff gets a bit heavy, so bear with me. But Carl mentioned earlier that we are funding our depreciation to renew our assets in the future. But the work required to renew our assets is spread out over many years, and also we have an issue with delivering that. So you can imagine if we're funding so we're funding this cash, so we're building up little buckets of cash because we're getting this money from our rates. So we have a cash surplus building up. So what do we do with this? We call them reserves. So what do we do with this cash surplus in the meantime? We let other activities borrow it rather than going to the bank and borrowing externally. So this is the internal debt. At the 30th of June this year, our Three Water internal debt is at 10.9 million. And as I said, so our depreciation reserves that we've built up over time for our three waters is at 18.8 million. We've got a few other three water related reserves. So our total cash or surplus cash we hold for three waters is 19.4 million. We've borrowed, the three water activities have borrowed 10.9 million of that. So the remaining surplus of cash we have for the three waters is 8.5 million. Now, I've got a question there. Are we required to transfer this balance of cash to entity B? I wasn't sure at the time I wrote this, but that question's since been answered in a Zoom meeting we had late last week. So yes, the answer is yes, we would have to transfer this surplus to the new entity. And they're saying they would ring fence that for the purpose that it was collected.
Yeah, that's gold, isn't it? So the 17.2 sugar-coated carrots, not so sugary, is it? And just a comment too, Sue, on your last comment, they will be telling us where we can spend that money too. So it will have restrictions. It's not, it's a little bit like all
they haven't yet. I mean, I think we've got to look at things as they are today. In fairness, they haven't as yet. And in fairness, I think that I'm only paying the other side of this. In fairness, we have to say that 8.5 is going to be spent on our three waters plans for the future.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the 17.2.
Yeah, I know, but they haven't put anything on it yet. They haven't said it yet.
Yeah, they have. They've told us in a meeting that they will tell us where we can spend that money on. Carl might be able to comment on that.
I'm sorry, Ash, I can't. I haven't heard anything about the requirements or tags around that funding. In fact, sort of checked out of the conversation about it because none of it is targeted at water stuff. Sorry, I'm a bit selfish in that regard.
Yeah, no, it's not targeted at the water stuff. It was it was the DIA representative at the Entity B meeting that said it.
So just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, the 8.5 million cash, which has specifically been raised to fund water renewals, will transfer across. So we will have to borrow money to do that. So the difference, the impact on us, is the marginal difference between the interest rate we charge ourselves and the interest rate we'd have to borrow it from the bank. Is that right, Larnia? Did I get that right?
Yep, that's right.
So you can, at the moment, what's our difference in interest rates that we charge ourselves? 1%?
Yeah, probably less than that at the moment.
Okay, so 1% on 8.5 million will be the difference that other activities will have to pick up because of that cash going out of the system and being transferred to a net external debt.
Right. So just clarify, do we charge ourselves less for our internal borrowing?
So we charge the difference between what we can borrow money for externally and what we can invest for. So we do the midpoint.
Yeah. So
it's less than what we pay externally.
Borrowing will get more expensive as well.
Yes, marginally.
Yeah.
And I guess, Ash, just where I'm coming from, I mean, those are the questions that we need to ask and get some answers pinned down on what do we have to do with that 17 mil.
We've seen that, so it's somewhere in the paperwork. I've read it twice. There's two lots of bits and pieces where you have to do, and it's like to be spent on the well-beings. It's got to be in consultation with some of our other partners and on certain things. It's somewhere in the paperwork, and I'll dig it back out for you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
There's two different options we have.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.